Good morning, the Preaching Humanist here. About 2 to 3 weeks ago, my new friends from Cleveland, Ohio, from the Freethinkers and Humanist groups, invited me to come speak for their group on promoting secular humanism. During this age of COVID-19, of course, I'm unable to fly up there and speak for them, so here we have it on Zoom. So enjoy this talk. I gave this presentation on secular humanism and promoting it and advancing it, followed by a session of Q&A. Enjoy and have a wonderful day.
So David was a Pentecostal preacher from 1976 to 1989 alongside his dad, right? So you're raised in this like Pentecostal tradition, right?
Yes, very.
Right. And you lost your faith in 1990 and began a journey that led you to secular humanist activism. And so that's your passion today, right? Promoting and advancing humanism as an alternative to theistic religion. And you do so by Saturday morning activism, holding signs in Austin, your hometown, Austin here, and feeding the homeless, public speaking, and then your Preaching Humanist YouTube channel, which I'll post a link to in the chat here later. And of course, Zoom chats now, you also do, right?
Yes.
And we're glad to have you join. You started posting on Cleveland Humanist Alliance page and thought, wow, what you do is really awesome. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome. It's good to be here. All right, are we ready?
I think so, thank you.
Okay, are you recording?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, my new friend from Cleveland, Ohio. She went over briefly my little bio. I know a lot of people would love to hear my deconversion story. I'm kind of a progressive type guy, right? I like to advance and move ahead. I like to promote something that I think is beneficial for all. So as Megan said, from about 1976 to 1989, I was one of those guys who used to go door to door for Jesus, right? I was a very strong evangelical Pentecostal young preacher. I was born in the 1950s, so yes, I'm in my 60s, right around the corner from you, up in Detroit, Michigan. And my father took a church in Waco, Texas. I always like to say where there are more Christians than there are people, right? Just north of here up in Waco. And I started as his staff evangelist in the late 70s. By early, mid 80s, I went independent, started 2 churches. I planted 2 churches in Waco, did some traveling, helped plant other churches, and traveled to different churches in the more rural areas of Texas and a few nationwide churches to promote Christianity and to motivate believers to go out there and be unashamed. So here I am 30 something years later. I identify as an atheist. It's been about 30 years now, but I've matured and grown into my secular humanism, which is really far above and beyond theistic religion. That's my passion. So I do want to go over a few points today. I want to go over, number 1, what I do briefly. Number 2, why. And these are very important. Why I believe we should do this type of activism. Number 3, I'm going to talk about a prerequisite I think is very important before we do this. And of course, number 4 would be the practicalities of doing it, where the rubber meets the road, what I do, how to do it, and so forth. Okay, so let me show you what I do briefly. You may have seen some of my posts on the Preaching Humanist Facebook page. In fact, this morning, I went out to feed homeless people. I stood out there on the trail in free speech zones in Austin with my signs, my cards, and of course I do the videos as well. I've done public speaking up till about a year ago in this COVID age, and it's a little bit different. It's more challenging for me to speak to a camera on Zoom than live people, but it is what it is, and I'm happy we can still stay connected this way. So here's my signs that I hold up when I go out. This is one of my favorites. the secular humanism, good without God or without God belief. Another one I love, and this is probably my favorite now. Very simple concept, but to very strong evangelical Christians, they don't like this for some reason. They don't want to share that thing called love. So to love is simply human, right? And then this one, very important, good one there. And another one I do, of course, would be the keep church and state separate. Also, I started these cards about a couple years ago. I've got the little red card. So on one side, I have the Austin Secular Communities. There are 5 groups here in town, just like you folks in Cleveland have several groups, and it's very important to stay united, right? To keep that coalition. Austin Secular Communities, I've got their name and their website when I go out and pass out literature. On the other side, I have the national secular groups. These groups that those of us that are humanists and atheists, agnostics, have learned to love through the years, right? American Humanist, American Atheist, Secular Coalition for America, Center for Inquiry, American United for Separation of Church and State, and the wonderful folks in Houston, right over, not far from here, the Foundation Beyond Belief. And one more thing I pass out. You'll be surprised in my talk today when I discuss this, how many people out there, face-to-face dialogue, have never heard of humanism. Many of them are already non-religious. So what is humanism? I go over the different definitions. There are many definitions and descriptions. So I pass out literature to educate people. That's what I do. Now, let's talk about the why. Why do I think it's so important to get out there and to talk to people, to hold up signs, and to be visible? Number one, secular humanism is very, very valuable. I think it's something that can benefit the world. It encapsulates so many beautiful things. There are 4 progressive values of secular humanism. I don't have time to go over them all. One is simply freedom for all. You can't beat that. Another one is equality. Another one is altruism, the caring, the sharing, the compassion, the empathy for other people. Because altruism flourishes in our ethical system, in our consequentialist ethical system of secular humanism. And of course, truth. We're always looking for data, facts, through science and testing. So these are 4 progressive values of secular humanism. And I believe what we have is very valuable. So that's one reason we want to get out there and share this, because it's good for folks, right? We want the well-being of all people, and we want to decrease suffering as non-believers. Another reason I do this is to simply normalize atheism, to normalize agnosticism, to normalize what it is to be a non-believer. Now, I'm the guy out there. I'm the one out of my atheist confirmation bias bubble, if you will. Sure, I do videos, but when I'm out there holding up signs and talking to people face to face, that's where you can really normalize this. People are surprised when I'm out there smiling and just loving on people. They don't understand that concept because to them, on the Christian right, they own that thing called love and compassion, right? We're out there to normalize, let people see that we're just like them. We too also can be good. There's a quote I've used for years. It's a good one. Visibility and awareness are the keys to acceptance. If we want to be accepted as equals, and we want to end Christian supremacy in this country, we want all to be equal, we must be visible. Now, I set up a tent and a booth I call tabling up in Georgetown, a rural area just north of Austin, where it's a little more conservative, a little more Christian. I've set up a booth for the Atheist Community of Austin for about 2 or 3 years until COVID hit. And I remember, I've got a lot of stories I used to tell as a preacher, and I still tell stories. And I'm going to tell you about Georgetown Pete. Georgetown is a city just north of Austin. Georgetown Pete was a man about my age in the 60s. His tent at this trade show was right next to mine. And he noticed the atheist signs and the humanist signs that we had. I walked up to him being the amiable, diplomatic guy that I am, trying to find common ground with people. I introduced myself. I had my friendly neighborhood atheist t-shirt on. And I went, hi, my name's David. I'm with the group from Austin, the big city, close to you, Atheist Community of Austin. How are you, sir? He looked at my shirt, said, I have nothing to say to you, sir. You're an atheist. This is it. I said, excuse me, do you think maybe we could just respect each other as humans, even if we have disagreements? Long story short, through the months and the 2 or 3 years, Pete's been a good friend of mine. He's learned to recognize that I too can be moral and good. So if we want to normalize this, we got to get out there and show them, right? All right, here's another reason I do what I do.
Oh my God, did we ask? Why do you do what you do?
To inform scattered non-believers about groups and communities. When I'm out there passing out literature, there are a lot of people that have already left belief in a God. They don't know there are groups. They don't know there are communities for non-believers. And I have coined a phrase I like to think that I came up with, maybe not, it doesn't matter. But when I talk to believers or non-believers, and I promote the groups nationally and locally, I say that there are people out there that miss the good part of church. Now, some of you may not like to hear that. Now, being a former Christian Pentecostal preacher, I don't throw the baby out the bathwater. There's some good stuff they do, like the community, organized philanthropy. They're good at all that stuff. So there are people out there that are just longing to get back to some kind of community and identity that resembles what they came out of, without the dogma or the authoritarianism, right? And without the Bible and the supernatural, obviously. So that's very important. Now, a few months ago, I was out on my regular Saturday morning in urban Austin with my signs, my mask, standing 6 feet away. And I noticed an African-American young man approaching me. He came up to me about 6 feet away. He had his mask on. He didn't look very happy. And it looked like at first he was another one of those angry evangelical Christians that were going to give it to me, right? And he said, sir, what is this all about? And I explained to him what I'm doing, just promoting the groups, finding people out there that long for community that are non-believers. And he told me a story. He said, sir, I just left the Jehovah's Witness religion. My wife divorced me. I've been completely repudiated from my family, much like myself. My father, who I used to work with, disowned me back in 2018, about 2.5 years ago. He said, you're no longer my son. You're dead to me. I despise everything you do, everything about you. Sometimes there's a price to pay for doing this. Now, this young man lost his wife and his 2 children. Now, I'm a parent of 2 mid-30-year-olds and a grandparent to my daughter's 3 children. And my kids are in their 30s. I couldn't imagine a greater pain than to lose children. He cannot see his 10-year-old boy and 8-year-old daughter anymore, simply because he can't believe in the Jehovah thing or God anymore. He was broken, hurt, and wounded. And I said, you need a loving community to help you. And he was longing for that. And he was very happy to take these cards for these different groups. I remember many times being out there, setting up tents, going to the Alamo in San Antonio, done that many times. I've taken teams with me, normalizing atheism, passed out literature, educating people, smiling, loving on people, let them see that we are good too. There are many people out there that have been hurt and damaged by hardcore Christianity. I was one of them, but you can get healed up from that. So they need groups of loving, compassionate people that can accept them. Similar to a church, but for non-believers. One day I had a tent set up for one of the groups, and I was tabling, And I was bombarded, is the word I'm trying to find, I guess. Overwhelmed and overcome by non-believers in the smaller rural town of people that thought they were the only atheist or agnostic in this town. And they ran up to me and hugged me and thanked me for being out there. They didn't know that there are communities. They didn't know anything about humanism. All they knew was, I can't believe in the supernatural anymore, but I want to continue a life of goodness and happiness and love and all the other things that are just human innate as a social animal. Another reason I do this is to find allies and friends. This is important. On the very Christian left, on the progressive side of Christianity, there are liberal, progressive Christians that identify with them as allies in many ways and friends. They come up to me. They see the good without God side. They see my atheist t-shirt. I had a lady come up to me with her husband a couple months ago. I took a picture of them, put it on my Preaching Humanist Facebook page. I was moved to tears of joy. Hey, I'm Italian. Hey, I get a little emotional, right? And she came by, saw my sign, and she said, "Sir?" I said, "Yes." She goes, "You're an atheist?" I said, "Yes." And she goes, "Well, I'm a Christian." And I went, "Oh, no, you're not going to yell at me too, are you?" And she laughed, and her husband was standing next to her. He was the quiet one. She was the talker, right? And she said, "I love all of your signs. I agree with you that you can be good without God. I agree about promoting science and reason. I believe in science. I agree with you about keeping church and state separate because religion and government will both exist in greater purity the less they're mixed together. We know that." That's one of the founding fathers quotes, right? She said, "I agree with you on all of this, except we have a few differences." I said, "Obviously." That made me happy. Now, I wasn't there to change her mind and debate and argue with her. She's already there. She said, we all can be good and moral. I don't care if you're an atheist, as long as you don't discriminate against other people. So let's find these people that are out there that we can work together with, especially politically in other areas, right? Of equality and freedom for all. I had two women approach me not long ago on a Saturday morning at the state capitol here in Austin with my signs. They were very left-wing progressive Christians, this far from being pure humanists and atheists. Everything they do is pure humanist, right? Just being good. And they did the same thing. They said, "Sir, we have no problem with non-believers. We'll work with you on all these different things, on social justice and inequalities and all the great things they do." So no, I'm not a bridge burner. I talk to believers. I tell them what we do, but I do not compromise with many things in the Bible. That's where I make my stand in secular humanism. I do find common ground. I do work together with people. I love on all people, but you don't have to agree with everything. There are differences, obviously we have. And that's a whole other topic. Finding common ground is another reason I go out there. These are two words that when I was a younger activist a few years ago, I didn't like. I didn't want to hear about finding common ground with people from the other side of the fence, right? Because what I preach is what's over here on the side of the fence of unbelief. We have lush green grass over here, folks. It's not that bad. In fact, it's very good. But common ground is very, very important if we want to normalize it. We want to make the world better without the compromise of things we don't agree with. There's a lot to talk about there. And another reason I do what I do, this is extremely important, to reach the nuns. I'm not talking about these nuns. Hey, I'm an old Pentecostal. I don't know how the Catholics do that, but I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the very famous NONESs, those that identify as non-religious. Now, they have left theistic religion, many of them. Many of them were born in a secular family, but they don't really gravitate toward the scientific method, reason, rationality, free inquiry, the things that we promote in humanism and atheism. They're just kind of in limbo. I meet these young people out there every weekend. They're kind of at a point in their life where they don't care. But what scares me about that is they're open prey for any other crazy idea and belief system out there. There's a lot of credulity in the world today. We know that. It's hard for some people to come to that point in their life where, you know what, there's no evidence for anything supernatural. What is there to replace it? Well, we got something in humanism. But there are many non-religious people out there. The majority of them gravitate toward spiritualism, New Age spiritualism, necromancy, extrasensory perception, higher powers, and so forth. So we must go out there and even educate them and show them that we've got something that can give them identity, that you have shared values with other people and communities. So secular humanism has much to offer. Now, you notice I did not mention one thing. I did not mention one of my reasons for being out there. I did not mention that I attempt to debate and argue with believers. Now, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater there either. I have many friends in Austin who've gone out with me and I've taken teams with me to different places. And they're debaters. They're philosophical debaters. And they're out there to change people's minds. Now, I'm not saying that's bad. There's street epistemology. There's a place for that. We have some of the greatest atheist debaters in the world right here in Austin. You may have heard them because my little show is owned by the Atheist Community of Austin. You've heard of Atheist Experience? I know the people. I used to do my show in the same studio. Talk Heathen. These are wonderful shows, but they're about debate and arguing. And that's still okay. I'm looking at it from a different angle. I think we need to get out there and normalize and promote. These are both important. I don't do that. I do something different, and they're both good. Here's another reason why I do it. I'm sorry, I already talked about that. Let's move on to 3. There must be a prerequisite to this type of activism. And that prerequisite is simply, we must be healed up and recovered from any angry, and I call this something that I have a 2-part series on this in my show, healed up from angry adolescent atheism. What does this mean, adolescent atheism? I was the quintessential angry atheist for a while. I wanted to lash out and get back at how Christianity hurt me, how it robbed me of the prime of my life. From age 19 to 32, all the way up to 1989, when I was 32, I gave my youthful years to something now that I think is an illusion, a delusion, right? And I was angry. It hurt me in many different ways. But I went on to heal up. When I started this kind of activism many years ago, actually I was out to get back at Christians. I had a wrong attitude. So there must be that recovery time, that healing time, before you go out and talk to people. Now, we've heard of the 6th clause of the 6th Amendment in the Constitution, right? And it talks about the no religious test clause. No religious test shall ever be required for a political office. Well, I kind of have a test clause. I've taken people out with me to coffee or lunch, usually young men that want to get involved with what I do. But before I want people to go out there and stand up there with signs and to love on people, I want to make sure they're out of this angry adolescent stage. Because there are a lot of atheists, I'm sorry to tell you. I used to be one of them, I know. And I go to different groups and speak. There's still a percentage of them that want to lash out. They criticize constantly. That's not what we need when you talk to people out there. I remember taking a young man when he called me to coffee. And he said, David, I want to go out there, but I'm not sure if I'm ready. I said, okay, let's talk. I listened to a story. I didn't know quite if he was ready or not. I said, let's try it. He went out with me to feed homeless people. We walked down to downtown Austin with signs near the Capitol. Within 10 minutes, he came to me, David, I can't do this. I just want to hate. I want to yell. I want to get back. So this is a prerequisite. There's a thing called healthy-minded, emotionally secure people, right? No one's perfect. We're all on a journey. We want to be at that stage where you have matured past just your atheism or agnosticism into your love of all people. We can't change the world through hate. You can't change the world and force a horse to drink the water unless that horse is thirsty, right? You can offer it to him. That's what I do. And you're going to find out there are lots of people out there that don't even have to be told, well, there's no God. They're finding out on their own. We have this thing called science and education, philosophy, critical thinking. The internet, back in my day, was a lot harder. People are falling from the Christian tree. There's fruit out there all the time. You know, I used to preach, the harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few. There is a plentiful harvest out there of non-believers. But we need to gather them in before there some other irrational belief system gets a hold of them. We must be able to love ourselves first before we can go out and love on other people. Now, I want to talk about the how-tos. How to do this. This is important because this is where the rubber meets the road. You can do digital dialogue all day long, which is very effective. And being an old guy turning 64 here this July, almost forgot, 2021. I'm from the old school. We just talk, right? We have face-to-face digital dialogue rather than walking around on iPhones like this. And I tell you what really drives me crazy is when I see people driving, looking at their iPhones, or out there with their children, and the kids are saying, Mommy, Daddy, give me some love, give me some time. Spend some quality time with me. And the parents are on their iPhones or their notebooks. We can't get away from this face-to-face interaction. We remain a social animal. The last time I checked, we're still social. We need this connectivity with other people. To me, face-to-face interaction with people are much more powerful and persuasive than just digital. I've tried to write things on computer. I'm not a good writer. I'm a speaker. I've tried to have dialogue or debate, whatever, online. I can't format my words on a computer. I do it this way. But when you do that only, people can misinterpret you. They can't see your face. They can't see that you're trying to find common ground with people. They can't see that you're a kind person. They're going to misinterpret it. To me, there's no better way than being out there. Now, this is not for everybody. But I only hope that each group I've ever talked to, there's a few people that will get a hold of this. I want to take this to the next level because my experiential intelligence from a guy who didn't even go to college, all I knew was the Bible. I was raised in an anti-intellectual environment. My dad mocked the New Englanders and the Northwesterners in Seattle and Portland, and all the intelligente and the secularists and the liberals. He mocked them. I was raised without science. I was told that Charles Darwin was Satan's progeny and offspring. It was tough to leave that at age 32. So I started my journey on my own, learning, reading, learning about Charles Darwin, right? And evolution. And it's been a journey for 31 years, and I'm still like a kid in a candy store. I can't get enough of books. I read, and read. Now, face-to-face interactions are powerful and persuasive. And to me, one of the most effective ways, and I'm speaking to you humanist folks in Cleveland, very few people do this. We must add this to our communities. Not only debate, not only arguing, but we've got to add something different. And it's called tabling. It's not for everybody. Tabling is effective because you have your sign up. You can put up Cleveland Humanists. You find a free speech zone. You have literature to pass out. Because I guarantee you, when you get out there, people will approach the table. It's much easier in a community together than the way I do it since COVID by myself out there. People see the name of the community. They don't know. They, believers and many non-believers, have no idea that non-believers can group up, that there is a community. Tabling can be very effective. Also, the signs and the cards. Always have some kind of sign. You can have the signs that I do. Something like this, that gets a lot of attention. Develop your own style. We must be unabashed and unashamed. Now, let me tell you a little secret here. The people in the Christian movement, they're unashamed. They're told, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. You remember that one? I used to preach it. We were unashamed. They're unabashed. And what I find, and my concern is, many people on our side of the fence are ashamed. They're ashamed to come out. They're ashamed for their co-workers to know they do not believe in God. They're afraid of being repudiated like I did for my family, my father. It can happen. But we must come to the point where we are unashamed. In fact, just this morning, driving home from doing all the activism I did here in Austin this morning, I came by this large mega church. I've been in there before. I'm the guy that goes in there and interviews people. I've talked to pastors. I've gone in there and said, hey, what's going on during COVID for you guys? Are you growing? They said, yeah, we're building funds. We're doing all this. They're aggressive. This morning I went out, drove by in the parking lot of this major mega church right down the street here in South Austin. They have a sign up, food pantry, free groceries for anyone in the neighborhood that is suffering through this COVID-19. If you lost your job, it doesn't matter. We love you because, and of course, they put the God stuff in there. They're there working. I got out of my car this morning. I had a few bananas and peanut butter crackers left from feeding the homeless. I walked up to them with my mask, introduced myself, stayed 6 feet away, and said, hey, I have a few bananas left here. You guys want to give away? Now, some of you are thinking, what are you doing? Why are you doing this, David? They have no idea that we are out there. They have no idea that we have a lot of shared values. In fact, as far as ethics and morals, 80, 90% the same, easily. This whole thing called love, they say, come here, you're loved, because Jesus loves you. We love you. They misinterpret these great feelings they have of their concern and compassion for others and love as something supernatural. We know what that is. It's simple. It's just built in us as a human animal, a social animal. But they're doing it. And I told them, I said, look, y'all, I'm actually an atheist. You're a friendly neighborhood atheist. And they just, like everybody else does, whoa, I didn't know you guys did this. Literally, he'd say that to me all the time. So yeah, we do. We also have communities. And I speak on humanism. It's kind of similar to Christianity in some ways. I like some of the stuff in the Bible, and they like to hear that. The Good Samaritan policy, the Golden Rule, treat others the way you want to be treated, loving other people. When I was hungry, I fed you. When I was naked, I clothed you. When I was homeless, I took you in. You explain to them, clearly, these are just humanist values. This came hundreds of years and centuries prior to the writing of the Bible. I explained to them about Confucius, hundreds of years prior to the character of Jesus, if he existed or not. how he talked about this filial love, this love we have for family. Confucius was a pure humanist. He didn't mention the gods. He said, take this love that you have for your family, your brothers, your sisters, your parents, your children, and share it with all of humanity. Believers don't know that. And when they understand that we're very similar to them, then you can normalize it a little bit more. And many of the people in those churches, they have doubts. And even if they don't change their mind, they become more liberal and progressive. And they start voting for freedom and equality for other people. That's when I can live and let live with believers, as long as they don't discriminate, as long as they don't attempt to take away other people's freedoms to believe whatever. And we know that's not true because the evangelical right, that's a whole other story. I don't have time to get into that. I've learned to just use 3 words when they come by and yell at me. I call these drive-bys in my business. You're going to hell. You can't be moral without God, all that stuff. I just go, be nice, We can have differences, like the guy named Jesus. And they get angry about that. So tabling is effective, holding up signs and cards. And I want to touch on this last thing, and then we're going to close. I have changed this past year or two, more and more. I'm growing more into this concept that the great late Paul Kurtz talked about. Corliss Lamont, the others. Now, they didn't know for sure this would work. I don't know for sure it'll work. But not many people attempt to do this. And one of my upcoming episodes, I'm going to call, the title will be, Call It All Recovered Reformed Preachers. Why do I do that are now non-believers? Because what our movement lacks in some ways are charismatic, emotionally charged speakers that have a message. We haven't gone out with our message. Sure, we've debated, argued, and criticized religion. Now, it deserves some criticism, no doubt, but we've got to move past just that. We've got to show them that this is above and beyond the supernatural. We don't believe that, we don't need it. When Christians tell me, well, David, you need God. Nah, not really. And even if it existed, you can't prove it, but even if you could prove it, I don't care. I don't need it. We've grown past these biblical morals and those teachings from the Quran as well. Now, I've grown into this concept now of we can take a message which is non-dogmatic, which is non-authoritarian, but what we need is more passion, a message that people don't know. And yes, resembling the pattern of church somewhat. Now, some of you may disagree. That's okay. There's no 100% certainty in humanism. It continues to grow, right? Based on science, new evidence. Right now, in the year 2021, with my experience being out there, both sides, being out of my bubble, people long for a group to find identity, to find people that are like-minded, to find brothers and sisters, they call it in Christ, friends, relationships. Humans are social by nature and find meaning in relationships. Humanist Manifesto 3, right? We have a message. We have a message. You can find meaning and purpose, happiness, love in life without believing God. But I don't hear it. I see a lot of debate and arguing whether there's a God or not. I can't disprove it because it's an idea in their head, and they can't prove it or manifest God in reality. This fight's been going on for 2,000 years. Most people out there, I'll tell you a little secret, they don't care about that. They don't care about the fighting and arguing between our debaters versus their debaters so much. Most of them just want to be loved. They want to be accepted in a group. They want friends. They want to be valued. They want morals and ethics. All that they had in church, in some churches, not all. We have that, but we're too afraid, many of us, to go the next step because it sounds too Christian. I've been told by some of my critics, well, David, you're too Christian-like, too churchy for me. Well, I'm going to tell you something. It's not for everybody. But those of us that came from that, and many people I meet out there do miss that good part of church. We can have something similar, but even better. And we can't forget that there's a beautiful balance between the humanities, the arts of humanism, philosophy, music, literature, poetry, having fun, little hedonism. Also the balance of science, education, PowerPoints, reason, all that as well. Now, back in the early, I close with this. Back in the early to mid 80s, after I left my staff position with my father, my brother and I, we were like the mafia. My dad was the senior pastor. My older brother and I were staff assistants. I was the minister of evangelism, youth, and music, all that. And after we split, my brother and I split against my father. Sad story. Anyway, I went independent. I did some traveling. Then I started 2 little churches in Waco, just north of here, 100 miles, in central Texas. Now, the first church I started was called New Wine Christian Fellowship. Got that Pentecostal flavor to it, right? But let me tell you what I did, and it works. This system works, folks. I went out to meet the criteria of Christ's teachings, I thought. I had a couple assistants, my buddies. We went out to the homeless, the needy, the poor, whatever. We started in a rat-infested, beat-up old church in downtown Waco back in the 80s, early 80s. We built it up to 20, 30 people. Then I moved to the Holiday Inn, rented a room, 40, 50 people. Then I said, forget this. My wife at the time, I'm remarried, by the way, got married a few years ago. And with my first wife back in the 80s and my 2 little babies at the time, we rented a large duplex in the west side of Waco. And I thought to myself, look, we have a lot of square footage. Let's take out the little bit of furniture we have, load up chairs in this front room. I had my piano. I'm a piano player. I write music. And I used to play for bands, and then I would preach and travel, kind of like Jimmy Swaggart. Yeah, sad to say, he was my idol in the 70s. Tell you my background, right? Jimmy Swaggart. And that system worked. I'll tell you why. We built that little thing up to 75 to 100 people. Sunday mornings in a neighborhood, the whole street was loaded with cars. They'd come to our duplex. We had a potluck every Sunday. People like that stuff. We're social. We had music playing. I was on the piano. My buddy was on the guitar. And we started at 10 o'clock sharp. People would walk in, bring their food, their family. They loved each other and hug each other. We look forward to seeing our family, our brothers and sisters, all week long to Sunday morning. Now, we believe this all was from God. We know it was just human. People came because they were valued, they were loved. There was happy music, and then they got to hear me preach for 30 minutes or whatever. This system works, people, of community. But we must promote and we must share this. And if you're one of those introverted people, which I know the majority of people in our worldview probably are, please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. This is not for everybody. But for those of you that want to get out there and promote and just love on people, that's all you got to do. You don't even have to debate. If you want to, you can. Effective, kind of tough, got to break through that faith thing. Faith is the certainty of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That's certainty. Unless they're open, I have people come up to me all the time with doubts. I got hundreds of stories I don't have time to tell you. I hope that somehow I've inspired some of you to do more than meet on Zoom, which is good, to have secular social clubs, which is all very important. I get it. We need that. But we need to consider taking another step. It's time, because I'm telling you, when I go out there, there are people that have no idea. They are blown away. Oh my gosh, I don't believe in God anymore. I didn't know that there are communities. I didn't know I can belong somewhere. Well, we got them right here, buddy. I pass out cards all the time. Let's take the next step. Let's be unabashed, unashamed. Let's take this beautiful message of secular humanism and let's share it with the world. And as I end all my talks, I always say this: remember to let the light, let the compassion, let the empathy, and let the love of secular humanism shine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, and then we can open up the floor for some questions here. If you want to type in the chat, or we can unmute here and answer. Thanks for answering some questions here, David, too. Yeah, thanks for what you do. And somebody just asked, where do you table? And that would be in Austin, right?
Yeah. This is all pre-COVID. So the tabling was up in the rural, like you and Cleveland have suburb cities, right? It was up in Georgetown, Round Rock, the suburb cities north of Austin, at they call it the Georgetown Market Days. It was like the second Saturday of every month, 9 months a year. And so that's why we table. And I knew the people there, the organizers, they're Christian, but they liked me, right? Because we're amiable. But yeah, so you can find any place where you can set up a table. You've got to check with the city ordinances, call the city, make sure whether or not you need a permit. A lot of places here in Austin, you can stand at any sidewalk in the city limit with signs. Tabling is a little different. But to me, tabling is the second most effective way. Number one, it's building strong communities.
Great. Let's see, I'm trying to see some other questions here. Oh, so outside of a church, James said, where do you table?
Outside of church.
Not sure exactly.
I don't know if I quite understand that. Outside of a church.
Maybe you kind of already answered that, describing like out in the community and free speech zones, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not tabling, but it depends on the city ordinance. You just have to check. But if you can't table, at least just make up signs. It's another good way to do community outreach together. You can go out, feed homeless people with your friends from the humanist group, spend time together on Saturdays, and then you go out there and just hold a sign up, humanism, loving people, whatever you want to do. Pass out literature for your group. I've always tried to get trifolds from the American Humanist Association and just pass out literature people don't even know. There are many non-believers that have never even heard of the American Humanist Association or the other groups. Yeah.
Let's see. Sharon said, great talk. Thank you so much, David. Excellent point that non-believers are vulnerable to irrational belief systems if they have no community.
Yes, and I want to make this point. This is not perfect. And I'm not speaking about a utopia. I don't believe in that. I don't think it's perfect. It's much like the great Carl Sagan once said about science. He said, this thing kind of works. It's very good. It's the best thing we've got, but it's not perfect, but it's better than anything else. So that's what I think about humanism. It's about the best philosophy out there. It's not perfect, but it's better. And it keeps getting better and changing.
Hey, can I say something?
Let's see. I'm sorry. Who was that? Go ahead.
It's me, Sandesh. Yeah, so last semester I took a class. Oh yeah, first I should say, like, hey David, like I really like what you discussed right now. Like, yeah, that was kind of missing for me as well somehow. Like when I was growing up and I let go of my faith. But yeah, so last semester I kind of took a class about philosophy of science, and there we kind of went to some of the things that Carl Sagan discussed. So like.
Sadesh, you were muted there accidentally.
Okay, so I can.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. There's a quote that I shared in the chat about what Carl Sagan says about like how there is a polarization among like non-believers or people who believe in pseudoscience and stuff, and we should be compassionate towards them and stuff like that. So yeah, like what David is doing here is like really good, and like that may help in that sense. So yeah, I'm really interested in like doing this kind of stuff. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. I want to stress also real quick that, I look at this whole secular movement as a wheel analogy I use. I have an episode on this on my show. And we're different spokes in the wheel. We have different spokes. One is street epistemology. One is critique of religion. One is debate, education, science, reason, all the different things, which are all good. But we need to add some spokes and balance the wheel out. Otherwise, it's going to be imbalanced. And I think that's more of a direction we need to get out there and kind of normalize it with others and educate people. So I'm not criticizing the other techniques. It's just let's move on and add this to it.
Here's a question from Marianne. She said, fabulous talk. In your public presence, you must encounter angry Christians who are verbally attack you. How do you deflect them?
Whew, good question. Yeah, through the years, I've evolved and changed and become a little more mature. I'm getting there. All these years it's taken. I used to retaliate and become overreactionary because I was still at that angry stage. You get the God bomb sometimes, the threats, you name it, have had it. But I used to react by becoming angry back, yelling back. That doesn't work. I've outgrown that. So now it's pretty much smiling back and just saying, hey, just be nice. WWJD, what would Jesus do? Now that one can come back on me too, because it depends on what Jesus we're talking about in the Bible. The loving hippie, compassionate Jesus, or the one that tossed people into the lake of fire. So you can't say that. The main thing is I try to take what the great, brilliant Michelle Obama said about 4 years ago. If they go low, you go high. So there's a lot of hatred out there, and you just go high. You just say, okay, thanks for your opinion, or no, I'm not going to hell, but just be nice to each other. But just try to remember that we don't want to lower ourselves and be caught up into that angry debate, because it doesn't do any good. And that's what they expect you to do. And when I used to get angry back at them, they would walk off many times and go, aha, see, you're an angry, bitter atheist. So we got to show them that we're above that.
So here's a question from Andrew. How do you avoid turning this movement into another group with a charismatic leader and a bunch of followers like a church? Without care, how do you avoid creating atheist cult movements?
Very good question. And again, I've been doing episodes on this. I read a lot. I think a lot. I've been known as an idealist, but I'm actually kind of a rationalist too. I'm trying to walk that fine line between using my past experiences, what I've learned from Christianity, and my passionate type talking, which motivates people, at the same time without the authoritarianism and the dogma. That is going to be a tough road. Now, the great late Paul Kurtz, the father of American secular humanism, discusses this in his books. And yeah, it's a tough line to walk. And I'm not perfect, folks. A few years from now, I may stand corrected. This may be wrong, but I kind of think it can work if we understand these are pluralistic democracies, and we have a group of leadership in each group of board members, active members that understand that we all have our strengths and weaknesses. We work together, but I'm at the point, Megan, I'm still at that point that we still need leadership. And to answer your question, which is a tough one for me to answer, we just have to be very careful that it doesn't become, we saw communism, look at Marxism. It started out very humanistic and loving, and then it was turned more into that secular religion. We don't want that either. So it goes both ways. extreme. So we have to be, the checks and balances have to remain open, objective in our thinking. We're always going to be skeptics. So I just think we can attempt it. I think that if we just sit there and have PowerPoint presentations, which are good all the time, it's not really appealing. We have to move people's emotions as well, because we're human, and humanism promotes the full human experience, not just reason and science, which is important, but also the emotional side too. We have to balance this thing out. So I'm going to give it a try, folks, and I try to talk about this, but we got to be careful not to be dogmatic or turn it into another type of religion. Yeah. I wish I had a better answer for you. I don't know.
And the fact that I think just like that when you're promoting, you're not trying to convert in that way from how you've said it anyway. And I think, in your behaviors, you're allowing for the other side to keep their beliefs. So that's fine.
Yeah, to follow up on the question, I mean, one of the main reasons that I can see why people join cults, churches, magical thinking, it's a shortcut. There's someone else to think for them, and they have that sense of community that all of a sudden they belong among the people that don't have to think either. So many people who join multi-level marketing, it's their religion. And the challenge I have is that as an atheist who's been an atheist since I was a child, my fear is that all of these atheist movements, whether the guys that argue all the time and have these cult followings, oh, he's my hero because he can shoot down and as they would say, own the libs, own the Jesus people, is that the future has to be where people start thinking for themselves and not following zealots and leaders, even if that zealot is an atheist. And it's a true fear of what's going on. And I admire what you're doing out there and having those conversations. I just hope that someone doesn't turn it into that as it goes forward.
Yeah, excellent choice. And good point. And you are from the group of atheists that were, I hate to say this, but non-molested or non-affected by evangelical Christianity. So you were raised more secular. And I appreciate what you just said, because some people that were raised without churches in God belief can't understand why someone like me.
Sorry to interrupt, but that's not the case. I was raised in a Jewish family that was practicing. I knew as a child that it was nonsense. I was, and my brother and my father also have over the years have grown into the same mindset. But I came from a family that had all of the superstitions of Judaism. I just knew it was nonsense from an early day. It made no sense. But I've been harassed through my entire life by Christians on campus in college. The Campus Crusaders for Christ used to camp outside my door and sing and pray and stop me to all sorts of craziness through my life. And I see so many of these atheist groups becoming that. The reason I like this group with Megan is more of a facilitator than a leader, is that we all get together, we have these great conversations and we talk about these things, but at no point in time do we look at it as who is the most atheist among us that can lead us. And that's the fear that I have of a lot of these movements going forward. If people aren't paying attention, all of a sudden someone becomes the grand poobah or whatever we want to call. We don't have pastors, we don't have preachers, but we've got our atheist guru, our atheist leader. It's a danger. And if people are aware of it, we can avoid that.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Yeah, that's something we should be very cautious of and aware of. Yeah.
Yep. I strive to be a facilitator when I'm asked to be by the group, not because I want to be in charge, because I don't.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. I mean, I've been there and done that with that. Even for me, it was that recognition as a young preacher. I've been up at the platforms, had all the attention and all that. Really don't care much about that. I just care about getting other groups motivated to go out there and do something for humanity through humanism.
Yeah. When my wife asked me why I joined the groups when we have our Tuesday night meetings, it's because I've got to meet some just incredibly good people that aren't out seeking that. It's
Yes.
very important to me. But again, I'm one. There's others that may think that I'm the lunatic, and they really do want to have a church-like life without God. And I get that too.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because a lot of people do miss the good part of church. And there are different organizations in America that are popping up that are very church-like. I speak at some of them without the God stuff. Yeah, and it seems to work for a lot of people.
Yeah, and there, even in our group, there are those that love to, I think, enjoy what we do because we challenge each other's ideas and share knowledge and grow intellectually because there's that give and take of conversation. But there is no zealot leader of our atheist or humanist movement, and that's why I asked. I was curious where you were on that, and I do. Please don't take it as me diminishing what you do, because I think the fact that there's someone there who's available and in view for when somebody's doubting, they can come to you and really recognize that they're welcome and they're not alone. I think that's brilliant.
Thank you.
I think the tenets of humanism definitely conflict with that idea of one leader taking over. So if that were to happen, it would be accidental. And the hope is that with science and rational thinking, you would continually combat that from happening.
Yeah, you even see it in clubs that have nothing to do with religion. If you're a group of guys that are people who are interested in aquariums, and all of a sudden there's a group of aquarium lovers, and then there's one guy in the group that thinks that he knows more than everyone, and he's got his group, and they split and they do. It's no different than religion, except that it's fish instead of God, which I'm not sure is that different, but.
Excuse me. There are different branches of humanism. I'm sure y'all know this. Judaism, the Judaistic humanism movement out of Brooklyn, New York. They are like a synagogue. They have basically a secular rabbi. They keep the culture, the ethical societies, the ethical culture. My friends here in town, everybody has an ethical society in each major city. They're more the humanist religion. They like the ceremonies and all. They kind of have some type of leadership.
Do they own one of those? Do they own one of those space lasers I keep hearing about? I've been trying to check one out.
The space lasers?
Yeah, I guess you haven't followed the news. Sorry.
No, not today yet. Sorry.
The lunatic in Congress claimed that the California wildfires were started by Jewish lasers.
Oh boy.
From outer space.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one.
Sorry, off subject. I apologize.
That's okay.
Well, we could go on to another question here. So we've got a couple. A comment from Dale and Wendy. I think that if everyone embraced rational thought, skepticism, maybe the last 4 years leading up to January 6th might not have happened. Yeah.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. What can I say? Yeah. Rational thinking. Yeah.
So here's a question from Sharon and Carlos. How does financing humanism differ from Christian church planting?
How does it differ?
Yeah, or I guess, does it differ? I don't know.
Well, we have to have financial support, no doubt. That's just the way the world works in economics, no doubt, right? We need support financially. I know that some of my friends in Houston and Kansas City, the Oasis Secular Network, and anybody from Houston or Kansas City, hello, my friends. They have donations similar to church. It's not a 10% tithe like you were required to do back in Christianity or Judaism or even Islam, that matter. But it's very similar. I mean, we need money for the communities. You got to pay the bills. You got to pay for the renting of a building. You got to pay for the YouTube channel, the Zoom and different things, and the activism. So, it needs to be presented that way, that we cannot operate in this realm of reality without money. You have to have it. So I attempt to, and I'm sure many of you do, to support some of these great organizations like the Foundation Beyond Belief. When I have a few bucks to spare, my wife is a public school teacher. We're not wealthy, and I'm just a personal trainer. Just she lets me retire in a couple of years, and then I can give myself more time to this. But yeah, we try to give financially support to the Foundation Beyond Belief, the American Humanist Association, the other great organizations. So it does require asking for money sometimes and requesting, say, we need some help. It's the way it works. Yeah.
And Christy asked a similar question. Do you ask for donations like a church does for good work? And you just kind of answered that, it sounds like.
Yeah. But I don't personally. I don't right now. When in the future, I let the cat out of the bag, whenever COVID's finished, if it will be, let's hope, after the vaccines and so forth in the future, I will probably attempt to start a community, a humanist community here in Austin. So yeah, I'm sorry, I just forgot what the question was. I was thinking about answering the other question. Could you repeat that one?
Talking about asking for donations, like directly asking, similar to a church does.
Yeah. I don't right now, but we will in the future for any community. There has to be some kind of PayPal donations, and any of the other groups here in town that I've spoken at or visited, they all require some kind of money and donations. So yeah.
I kind of like the difference between, say, a church and a humanist organization. The church quite often wants to have a big ostentatious show of wealth and the steeples, and just this ostentatious, ridiculously expensive things. And I don't know, I was not surprised to find out that these big old structures, as somebody who's managing one that was been turned into a nonprofit told me that a church sanctuary cost $6,000 a month to heat, just to keep the pipes from freezing. And if there was an event, they needed to spend even more money to bring it up to a normal temperature. It's cold up here in the winter. I'm sure it's probably, but you have air conditioning down in Texas. So that not being a place that has a physical location saves a whole lot of money. But, you're talking posters and pamphlets, you're just talking pocket change, not tithing.
Yeah. But that's right. If that's what you want to do, it does not cost much money to do this. But if you want to go and rent out a building and start a community with a big sign out there like churches do, which some people do, then it would require more money, no doubt. Yeah. But having a building would be very beneficial in so many ways, because I look at these big mega churches and what they do for the communities. They're the ones out there doing the drive-through, feeding people right now during COVID. They're the ones that are active throughout the week, every day. People centered around their life there. We could do the same thing with non-belief, but it does require money and manage well the correct way too, right? And not giving more toward what you're talking about, the aesthetics of it so much, the big steeples, and keeping it very affordable, and putting the money where more important things like taking care of the needy and the poor and so forth, which humanism supports big time. Yeah.
So here's a question from Dale and Wendy. What is the difference between humanism and secular humanism? What does secular mean?
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, I just did an episode. It'll be released. I did it yesterday. It'll be released on my show Wednesday night, this coming Wednesday, this 10th, I guess. Yeah, on that very thing. So under the banner of humanism, that kind of encapsulates many different branches of humanism. There's Christian humanism. There's a few progressive Christians that would say that. Most identify as either atheist or agnostic. There's Judaistic humanism. There's the ethical culture humanist religion. People just want to say humanist. I say secular simply because I don't want anybody to misunderstand me and have any doubts that I make sure that I put secular in there, that there's a complete separation. I don't believe personally, because I'm an atheist, but I don't believe in anything supernatural, nothing. no higher powers, no praying to the universe, gods or angels or demons. But under the banner of humanism, it kind of encapsulates all who would say secular. That would be humanists, agnostics. Some of the groups I've been to, there's a few progressive Christians that come, and they're 95% humanists. They just don't know it. There's a few New Agers that come, and that's fine, right? But that's a very good question. When we get into the semantics and so forth, and the word usage and all these little nuance, so it's probably better, honestly, to just say humanism and not to really pick and choose and argue about this. But personally, I say secular because I want people to understand that. But even though I don't mention anything supernatural, I still attempt to love all people and reach out, just even though I don't agree with some of their beliefs.
And let's see, Laura asked, do you use the term non-believer, and can you comment on that term?
Yeah, sometimes I do. I mean, like I said, it's not set in stone. This is not dogma, but I use non-believers sometimes, unbelievers. Sometimes I'll say secular. Sometimes I'll say secular humanist. Sometimes I'll say atheist. So it's kind of an amalgamation of all these words. To me, if you're under the banner of secularism, I mean, I've had young men come up to me at tabling wanting to argue, and they were secular, why I should be an agnostic and not an atheist. You know, debating and arguing with me over these frivolous little topics. And I've had to tell them, young man, I'm not here to argue with you whether you should say atheist or agnostic. I don't really care. If you're secular and you identify as non-theistic religion, we're all on the same team. I don't care. I'm out here for more important things, right? To normalize and do other things. So there you have it.
Let's see, a question from Dale and Wendy again. Why is Austin the focal point of atheism? Like with the atheist experience and ACA?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know for sure. Yeah, I would say, Megan, that it probably would go back to, now we are considered the blue dot in very red Texas, as you know. But it would probably go back to even Madeleine Murray O'Hara, remember, back in the 60s, the founder of the American Atheist Association. She was here in Austin. I know a couple of people older than me that have been in this movement of humanism and atheism in this city for many years, and they worked with Madeleine Murray O'Hara. So I think some of it has to do with that. The Atheist Community of Austin, I think, started 20, 25 years ago with their great debating shows, their call-in shows, which we've all learned to love, right? We have Matt Dillahunty and other people here, which people are very aware of. I know these people not very well, but I've rubbed shoulders with them here and there at the studio. And so to answer your question, I would say maybe because Austin is a little more liberal because of the University of Texas, and because the American atheist, Madeleine Murray O'Hara was here back in the 60s and 70s. So I hope that helps. I don't know for sure.
I had a question. You were talking about needing, enthusiastic speakers and possibly like clergy who have left churches as being good secular humanist speakers. And I was wondering, have you connected with the Clergy Project?
No, I haven't. I know about it. I think it's a wonderful organization, but no, I haven't. I know that, I don't know if Dan Barker is a part of it. There are several others that were once, Christian preachers that are part of that.
And I don't know if they would be I don't know if they would all be good candidates, since a lot of them are still undercover as practicing clergy members. So, obviously they wouldn't be, but if they're more out of the closet, maybe they would be potential good people to talk to. I don't know. I was just thinking of that when you mentioned the former preachers.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Let's see. Anybody else want to? Oh, Mark, you have your hand raised. You want to ask a question?
Hi, yeah. More looking for a comment from David. So there's sort of two reasons why, I'm a bit skeptical even slightly cynical of the idealism of secular humanism. One is, in a way, it's sort of a new thing. In a way, it's not. If we dial back about 10, 12 years in the atheist skeptic sphere, there was a lot of debate about accommodationism versus non-accommodationism. And it was kind of a similar debate within secular humanism now of, how we shouldn't go out of our way to criticize the beliefs of others, or should we go out of our way to criticize the beliefs of others? But ultimately, to the greater public, it really doesn't matter. It's funny because now, right, so we celebrate each and every first, okay, for instance, this past week, Pete Buttigieg, is that how you say his name? Is now the first openly gay member of, the presidential cabinet. Still, after all this time, when are we going to see, the first openly non-religious? You don't really see that. And ultimately, to the public in general, to be a non-religious person and a non-believer, I don't know if it really matters whether we, how much we try to portray ourselves as we're good human beings and this and that, despite our non-belief. The other point is that the incredible level of dysfunction that I've noticed in the greater atheist / skeptic / humanist community, let's say more like the sphere. Thankfully, not so much on our local. Our local, stuff is pretty good. But from what I understand, there was some big kerfuffle down there in, Austin, with the atheist community of Austin, not that long ago, where several leaders just split off, and it's over like one issue. It's very religious behavior. And that's another thing that makes me a little skeptical of the overall, sort of idealism of this whole thing. I'm just looking for some comments from David.
Yeah, good points. Yeah, if I can remember all these questions, I tell you, when I was a young preacher, I didn't have any problem. I could take 10 questions and remember them all. Now I'm forgetting my age, but there are some people in these communities, no doubt, that are not quite using this critical thinking and open-mindedness the way they claim to, right? They get offended if someone else, even in your own community, has dissent, right? And they split these groups over just some difference. And we shouldn't do that. We know better. We should attempt to have checks and balances, not just with all humanity, but also amongst ourselves. But I think to answer your first question, I think it's imperative that we're talking about why don't we have a public official openly secular or humanist or atheist. I think we're heading in the right direction. I think the more we normalize it, the more people that see people like me and others out there that are not these angry people that are trying to find common ground, the more that they will probably come to a point of, you know what, I might just vote, even though I'm a Christian, I might vote for that guy, Bernie. I'm a Bernie guy, but I might vote for that person who doesn't mention God or is openly humanist or atheist, even if I'm a Christian, just like I voted for the two people now that are in office, and they're Christians, but they have more progressive values. I voted for them, right? So I think that's one reason we definitely need to do it. I remember Obama, 12 years ago, when he said, I want an America that values and receives and respects all people of all religions and non-religion. Now, he didn't say atheists or humanists. That made me happy. Now, just a few weeks ago, we heard, the same old thing, God bless America. I'm a man of faith. I'm a woman of faith, president, vice president. It drives me nuts, to be honest with you, just between us as atheists and all. But out there with people, I don't let that show so much. But to me, it's baby steps. And this is how America works. I don't believe in the French Revolution style off with their heads, take it to the streets and burn the churches and all. To me, for America, when you have 48% of people that still do not even accept evolution, I mean, it drives me nuts, but it's slow progress and we got to get out there. So that's the way I look at it. And I'm hoping the more we're out there and visible, at least people will gravitate from the religious right the way I did. Because the second church I started, I was more of a liberal Christian. I didn't tell you about that. But a lot of them are changing and they're starting to accept atheists. And they'll vote for somebody who's into science and reason, even if they still believe in God. So I look at it as these little tiny baby steps improving. Now, if I were 24 versus going on 64, I'd probably go out there and dye my hair pink, purple, or blue and take it to the streets. There's nothing wrong with dyeing your hair pink, purple, or blue. But at my age, I think it's wise to just slowly progress. Kind of like the way evolution works somewhat. There are some tipping points, I understand, but I think that's the right way to go. And I might be wrong, but that's the way I feel. I hope that helps you.
Thank you. Yes, good answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Bob, you have your hand raised, so you want to ask a question?
This is not a question as much as a response to something that people said about the Clergy Project. They're actually very much under the radar, and they very consciously don't allow the public to find out much about them. I have a friend here in Columbus who runs a recovering from religion group who's active with the Clergy Project, and they're very careful about being confidential and not letting the public know about them. Just, this is secondhand information coming from me, but I thought I wanted to re-explain something that had been said recently during this discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I understand. I mean, you risk, coming out, especially these people that are still leaders in churches. It can be very devastating, like the young former Jehovah's Witness guy that approached me who lost his wife and kids, right? I mean, there's some repudiation. Jesus didn't say, I came to bring peace and love everybody. It's clear in there. I didn't come to bring peace in the world. I came to divide. I came to divide a father and a son, parents and children, and so forth. So that can happen. I understand that. So there is a price to pay. And this is where you have to go with reason, personal autonomy. We got to remember that. We can't control other people's thinking. In humanism, it's about that autonomy of ethics, personal autonomy, rational thinking. And if you can't come out, I understand. You have to think that through yourself. And if it would be hurtful to you and others, it may not be time. But for some of us, we can. And the more of us that can get out there, I think it's more beneficial for everybody.
So there's a comment from Sidesh, yes, evolution, not revolution. And I think that's in response to you saying that, change is slow. And I kind of agree, but a little bit disagree, because I think that revolution is also important. We do have important movements and activism, for instance, like the recent interest and, elevated status of the Black Lives Matter movement. And so I think both are important.
Again, we find balance, right? It's not one person doesn't have all the facts. That's, again, I'm talking about that secular wheel of all the different spokes. And I agree that that's very important. So you define revolution, if it's out there with signs and talking to people, sure. I personally don't go for the violent side of it. I don't think the violence works, but no doubt getting out there, being visible, visibility and awareness are the keys to acceptance, no doubt. So yeah, there's that balance. Yeah.
I mean, about that, I was saying, yes, there are people who are being vocal, and yes, I agree, evolution works. But if you want to change minds of people who are on the other side of the fence, I guess evolution is a better way to go. They are not going to change their views just like that. Just before some time, I shared that link, backfire effect. If you just try to confront them, they'll just stick to their beliefs. Yeah, so that's why I said it.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I mean, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I used to try to do that. I'd fire back at Christians and out of anger or that different style, and they would we call it the blowback. They would just build that fence up immediately and get into the defensive mode, right? And they would interpret that as Christian persecution. Blessed are those that are persecuted for righteousness' sake. They just think, oh my gosh, this atheist is firing back at me, angry at me. I might be really close to God. I'm doing something right because I'm persecuted. So they interpret it that way. But no doubt there is a balance of different types of activism. So we're open to all of it as long as it promotes good, and we test things by the consequences. We learn by trial and error. If something doesn't work, we eliminate it, right? Because morality is fluid. Humanism is fluid. It keeps changing with new evidence. And if something works, let's apply it. If it doesn't work, let's throw it out that dirty bathwater.
Does anybody else have a question that they want to unmute themselves and ask or type in the chat? But feel free. I had another question if nobody else. Just, you had mentioned having a church in a duplex, like in your religious days. But right now with the secular, how large is the community that meets regularly for when you were doing in person? Like, do you do a similar like potluck meal?
Okay, good question. I'm going to have to say, I'll use the Oasis network. You're familiar with Oasis. Started in Houston from a former Reformed preacher. This idea of taking the church concept without the God, right? When I was speaking there publicly up to COVID a year ago, and I spoke again for them a few months ago on Zoom, but normally on Sundays, pre-COVID, they would attract, and this is, keep in mind, the fourth largest city in the country, Houston. You take San Antonio and Dallas, put them together, and it's not much. It's almost, it's about the size of Houston. That's how large Houston is, like 2.5 to 3 million city limit population. But in that city, there are about 200 people that meet. And that, to me, is a good start. So 100 to 200 people on Sundays. And then the other group in Kansas City, I think they were up to 100 to 200. There's another chapter in Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, we're suffering with this COVID thing. We're all going through it. So are churches, right? We're having to do the Zoom and all. But that's what I'm looking forward to, is when this is over. This is not an old prophecy like I used to prophesy as a preacher. I would say, to me, once we get past COVID, humans, whether you believe in God or not, are going to be longing to group back up. We've got to be prepared for a influx of people that are looking to find people that identify as non-believers or atheists, right? Just like Christians. So I think this is perfect timing to prepare for, in our communities, for more and more people, because I think that's important. Now, I mentioned that, you know, the city of 2.5 million people, the fourth largest city in the country, should there be more than 200 people? I think there should be. I think it's a great system. It's a wonderful system. I just think we need to keep expanding and growing and getting out there and promoting it. My experience is being out there all the time, talking to people. There are a lot of people out there that have no desire for it. They tell me, David, I'm already an atheist. I don't need a group. I'm happy. I've got my friends. And I'm fine. I say, okay, good for you. But I find others that say, this is what I'm looking for. So it's those people that we want to really help bring in.
We have another question from Laura. As a humanist, do you pray? Prayer as focused thought or meditation?
Well, prayer is communication with God, if you want to define it that way. But no, of course not. Not the old school praying to a spirit in the sky, no way. But meditation, I believe in secular meditation. Sam Harris talks about this in length, and some people don't like it. Personally, I don't do it very often, but I think it's essential for some people to quiet down their brain. You know, the mind and the body are one. There's no such thing as mind outside of brain activity. Neurology pretty well shows that, but you can calm the mind down, getting into that nice calm area through meditation. So I think it works. I think a lot of people, a lot of my atheist friends and clients, even progressive Christians, some of them would do some of that meditation. So yeah, I'm open to all of that.
I guess I'm trying to think of another question. I guess kind of a selfish one as like leading this group. How do you combat like feeling possibly discouraged by there's so much work to do and everything you're saying you had to prepare? Like, how do you prepare for when there will be more people that you want to bring into this type of community?
Well, the good thing about COVID, if there's anything good, it's a good, for me, it's been a good growing time. I live with my sweetie, my wife, in this apartment, and our cat, Beatrix, my little sweetie. And it's been a time of personal growth. This is a time where we develop more patience and empathy for another person that you have to live with for many more hours a day, right, than normally. So it's been a good time for me to prepare for the time when we can go back out and meet up in preparation for what I want to do and how I want to encourage other people to prepare for this. So that's how I look at it. I try to look for the good in every situation, being one of those optimistic guys. And I always steal that quote from Steven Pinker, which he said in one of his great books, I am a self-professed, positive, secular humanist, cosmopolitan, optimist, eternal optimist. So I'm kind of like that too. And I'm just taking this bad situation and trying to develop into a better person and prepare myself for more messages in a way to just encourage and motivate people to get out there. And I want everybody to understand, I don't want people to follow me. I don't want you to be like me. There's only one me. Just be yourself. Like the gentleman said, he's afraid of this authoritarianism and hero worship. I get it. I understand. So that's a fine line. Be yourself. Be your personality. Be who you are. Just keep this in mind, that if you can help other people and show them that we do have something similar to what Christians do without the God thing, let them know, because they don't know. It's a good way to normalize it.
Thank you. So let's see. Mark has his hand raised. Ask a question.
Kind of an addendum to my last rambling, but also an embedded question. So I got to turn my screen back on here. Hang on. So it's an example of what I was talking about. So there is one in U.S. high office. Her name is Kristen Sinema. She was elected as a U.S. representative back in 2012, and now she's a senator from the state of Arizona. But this is a typical example. So when it came out and she was getting questions, you know, and basically, I guess she's non-religious, but her campaign statement was this: the terms non-theist. Now, she didn't mention secular humanist, okay, specifically, but she said, or her campaign said, the terms non-theist, atheist, or non-believer. Oh my God, I just lost it. Okay, hang on. Sorry. I'm trying to do multiple screens on my phone here.
Well, don't feel bad. I can't multitask. I forget things all the time.
Yeah, it's harder on the phone. Okay, statement from her, Kristen Sinema's campaign stated that the terms non-theist, atheist, or non-believer are not befitting of her life's work or her personal character. And there you go. It's the cooties, okay? It's like, and I guess my question is, you know, do you really think that advancing, you know, secular humanism in this sort of form will help get rid of the cooties?
I do think it will help. I don't know if we can ever be at the same level of those that identify as believers, because our American culture is so indoctrinated, such with that pervasive message of being good without God, to be a good presidential candidate or senator or a mayor or whatever, or school board member, you have to believe in a God to be good. But I don't think it's ever going to go away, that magical thinking. But I just think that, again, baby steps, I think we can get there. And I look back just 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I mean, I was a part of the Christian dominionism movement. I was there in the Waco Convention Center in 1979 with my father and my brother, where Jerry Falwell was there, and the moral majority under the Reagan years. We believed we were going to take over the government and this Christian dominionism and everything. So we have to counter that, no doubt. So again, it's just being out there little by little, more and more people running for office that are open about their non-belief or humanism or atheism, who don't swear in the Bible. I saw somebody who was just sworn into office, Kamala, the vice president, swore someone into office, and they used a little part of the US Constitution, not the Bible. I was very happy to see that, right? Because the last time I checked, in the Article 6 of the Constitution, the supreme law of the land is the Constitution, right? Not the Bible. So that makes me happy. So little tiny baby steps, but I think it would help. And I could be wrong, but I'm going to give it a try.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
See, I could share a comment from Stacia. I guess the idea is to have some structure without an absolute authority.
Yes. And what I want to do is have an organization with, you have to have board members for a 501c3, people that share the vision and passion of the people that started, right? And each group has a little different goal and objective. When I do this in the future, I want to probably be more the executive director type person, who's just more the visible person, the one that does a lot of the speaking, but not only. I envision maybe every other week on Sundays, a light secular message, nothing heavy, and then have other people from different groups come in and speak on the other meetings, alternate, have guest speakers from your group or wherever come in, and then have Zoom talks during the week to balance it out. Have Science 101 Zoom, that's very important. A lot of people don't understand the concept of the scientific method. Maybe a Thursday night, have Zoom Philosophy 101, and all kinds of outreach, active, vibrant community where everybody's involved in their passion, skill set, and ability. All kinds of social justice, animal welfare, poverty and injustice, and financial insecurities, the whole works under the community. To me, you get more done collectively. That's the way I look at it. Rather than a lone ranger like myself doing this, I'd rather do it in a group of people that have the same shared values. Even though we have some disagreements, but we find the major things to agree on. Just like in other relationships, if you're married, you don't agree with your husband or wife on everything, but the important things we agree on. We always have these slight little nuances and differences, and that's okay. Especially as a humanist or atheist, we're always gonna want to debate a little bit, right? And learn from each other.
Yeah, if we don't have some sort of structure, some sort of administration, then we can't do all these really good things. I mean, it's something that I learned about 30 years ago when I was part of a neo-pagan spiritual group. This group has lasted as long as it has, which is over 30 years, because they actually had an administration that was democratic, and there was consensus building, and if you couldn't reach consensus, you voted on the issue and let the democratic process take place. And I do believe that we can have that without having somebody just sort of appear as a leader, as most people would think of as a leader in a organization like this. In other words, we can have the structure and everything without it getting cultish, without having some absolute person at the helm.
Well, I mean, I agree mostly. I agree that no, that's okay. I mean, we definitely, like I was on the board for the Atheist Community of Austin a couple of years ago, and it was very democratic, pluralistic. Our other groups in town have the same thing. It's beautiful. That's the way it should work. Checks and balances, differences, and all that. But I guess where I want to take it is, I still think, and I could be wrong again, but I still think that someone has to be the person with that vision and passion, because in any movement, there's always somebody that leads. Again, without that dogmatism, without the absolute certainty, and that's a fine line to walk. There's got to be someone who has this vision and passion and who is the spokesperson. and other people as well. So I think that there's a fine balance there too. And I think personally, that's what some of the groups have been lacking in. They have these inconspicuous leaders, wonderful people behind the scenes that run the board, that do all the structural internet stuff and all the things I have no idea about. I can't even explain what the cloud means in technology. I'm technologically challenged. But if we all take our position in exercising our abilities and strengths in a pluralistic democracy, that does include some of the people that are gifted, nurture nature for me, but abilities to communicate and motivate people and also have other people to share. That's where I'm at. I think that that's kind of what we need, that type of leadership.
You know, part of it's also recognizing that not all atheists are of like mind. The only thing in common is a lack of belief in magical thinking or deity. But you know, I've been in atheist groups that reminded me of the scene from Life of Brian, where they were arguing whether they were the People's Front of Judea or the Judeo's People's Front, with this, you know, slight difference. I mean, Islam has internal wars because there's basically two different mindsets of who the next guy in charge was. So the challenge for us is how do we accept and deal with all of the different ideas of atheism. For example, Stacia and her background in dealing with the pagan movement. To me, it's meaningless, but I accept her because I know that at the core, we're both non-believers and people who mean well. So I think the definitions need to be beyond just a lack of belief, but also that humanist side of, you know, choosing people and understanding morality existed long before religion, and agreeing on those concepts are what's going to bring us together more than I'm more of a non-believer than you. That's nonsense. I believe in less no God than you do.
Look, I agree with you because I've been to all the different communities around Texas, different places, and what I'm finding and what concerns me is some of these groups are wonderful. Some of them are kind of been infiltrated by these subversive, angry people that are there to out atheist the other person. Who's got the best arguments against the theist? Who has the best argument, whether or not there's determinism or free will? They want to debate and argue on every single thing. I don't care about determinism, free will. To me, that's kind of frivolous. There's more important things to do to me. So like you said, finding the things in our communities with your friend there who came from the pagan background, we find the important things that we agree with, just like in any other relationship. And each group is a little different. I just had a wonderful talk with the new president of ACA and the other president from the other group, and talked to them about my desire to start something in the same city next year, whenever. They were in agreement. They said, I can see us all working together in unity, just a little different style. It's called ecumenicism. You remember that term from Christianity? They try to find unity. I think it can be done. It's, again, we're the ones that claim to have reason and science. Let's back it, and let's be more rational, and let's take people's differences without splitting groups and fighting all the time. Let's just find those areas we unite on and stick to those.
Yeah, at the core of the groups that matter, it's really about that common thread of wanting to be educated, wanting to be able to think, take care of family and grow, that sort of ties all of the different groups together, even some of the religious groups, not all of them. But you know, that should be the criteria, and this idea of whether or not we're allowed to eat because, you know, somebody has a different version of prayer, to me is just catastrophic in humanity. Yeah. So, you know, and again, that's why, you know, as an organization, as long as we're a democratic organization where everybody has their input and there's no clear, I'm the man, I'm more of an atheist than you, so follow me, mindset has to be very much avoided in all of these things that we do. And I've had not as many experiences of you of dealing with people, but folks that know me well enough come to me and ask about being an atheist and what it means. And lots of people I know who come from very religious families, and they're just like in the gay community, they have to be closeted or they're going to lose their family.
Yeah.
So, how do you coach folks through that, and how do you deal with it on a human nature and support them and let them know that they're not alone? That to me is the most important thing that we do. All that other stuff to me could lead to even a worse situation than we have now.
Yeah, like I said in my talk, that's a good point. There are people out there that are very hurt, very wounded, devastated by their past from evangelical Christianity, and they just need a group of loving people to accept them in and get them healed up. And that's another plus for having a community for people that are non-believers, humanists. Yeah.
So David, I have a question here from Dustin that I don't know if you have enough time to answer. It might be a little in depth, but it was, how did you personally work your way out of the adolescent atheist phase?
Ooh, that is a good point. Okay, two little preacher stories and I close. Stories are good. Now, about 3 or 4 years ago, I resumed my public speaking and for groups after all these years when I used to preach in the 70s and 80s. And I would take a team with me to San Antonio, Alamo, right down the road, about 80 miles. And I remember one particular day, about 3 or 4 years ago, I had about 6 or 7 guys that went with me, the young guys that wanted to get out there. And I was really happy about that. They wanted to get out there and hold up signs and talk to people, right? But I remember being attacked, not physically, but by 2 young, angry Baptist preachers, right? And they were just going at it, and really giving it to me. And I remember the hatred that came from them. And I was so tempted to hate back and vilify them that they were vilifying me. And it just blew my mind. I started seeing, I grew into my humanism more and more. The more I study about human nature, the social sciences, a little neurology, a little bit of everything, right? In science, you find out that we're all so connected, very similar, whether we're non-believers or believers. And I didn't like the way I felt when I yelled back at Christians in my angry atheist stage. I never felt good. And I would literally turn my back after having a shouting match with an angry Christian, and I felt miserable. Something was wrong. That just didn't resonate with me. And I remember sitting down at the Alamo at the free speech zone. If you've been to San Antonio, downtown, many people have been there. And one of the guys in the group walked up to me and said, "You okay, David?" I said, I can't do this anymore. And he said, "What do you mean? You can't quit?" I said, "No, I'm not going to quit, but I got to change. I can't do this style anymore. It's killing me." There was so much hate. So that kind of began my journey, along with my research, my experience with people, being a personal trainer and going into people's homes. Now I train Zoom and going into Christians' homes, Hindu homes, New Age spiritualists, other atheist homes. And you find we're all very similar and you can get along with people without talking about politics or religion so much, right? And the next week or next month, I went back with another group to the Alamo. Same thing happened again. This older couple in their 50s approached me and they started telling me the angry atheist, angry Christian stuff, right? And I couldn't do it anymore. I just said, "I'm not here to be angry back at you. I can't do this anymore. I'm just out here to let you know we're out. Just like you guys, we have communities, we have shared things with you guys. We're not that different, even though we have some differences." And they wouldn't have any of that. And they said, "You're either for us or against us. You're an atheist, you're against us, you have no morals," the whole thing. That killed me. It hurt. And so from those 2 instances, I really started changing and really maturing more and more and more into my humanism and finding the way I react and talk to believers is totally different now, way more effective. And I don't have time to go over all the stories. And they're literally like this when you talk to them now, rather than very angry. So it was a slow process of that angry stage. But what I recommend, if you're at that angry atheist stage, I have a series on that in my show, is called The Recovery from Religion, Dr. Daryl Ray. I never met Daryl. They have the toll-free number, they have counselors, but you can get healed up from that and you'll be a happier person. when you get healed up from your anger and what Christianity did to you in the past, and you start loving people, even though you don't agree with the beliefs, because there's some bad stuff in there still, we know that. But you can love yourself, you'll be happier, and then you can love other people. And that's how you really change the world for the good, under the banner of humanism. I hope that helps.
Thank you. And Christy has a question. What experience led you to leave your faith?
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, phew, I got a whole message on that. I guess you have to go to my show, but it was a slow process. It was, I guess, after 13 years from 1976 to 1989, I just couldn't do it anymore. I didn't see the promises of the Bible to becoming true. I didn't see God's provisions with a wife and two little babies at home. We were starving. I was working 2 or 3 jobs, crying out to God, fasting, praying, having marital problems. You know, I felt like Job, right? So I tried to justify this hardship I was going through. Finally, I just started thinking, this doesn't make sense anymore. And within a year or so, I identified as an agnostic. And then within that end of that year, I was already an atheist. So, but it was a very arduous journey. I can't remember one incident, but it was just little by little. And that leads me to another topic, which we can discuss some other time. Are some people preconditioned with that type of thinking? I've got 2 siblings that could never figure it out. They're good people. They still believe in God. Why did I change? My biological brother and sister could never. So that's a deep topic, and I don't have time to get into that. But I'm just happy. I'm glad it happened, and I just want to help as many people as I can before I get too old.
Thanks for that. And then Sidesh, it looks like in the comments here, he wrote, recommended a couple of books for kind of overcoming that adolescent atheist stage, the Carl Sagan's Demon Haunted World. And
That's a good one.
Then his daughter, Sasha Sagan's For Small Creatures Such as We, Rituals for Finding Meaning in Our Unlikely World. So thank you.
Good choices.
Well, thank you so much for having us, or meeting with us, and sharing what you do. So, what's the one thing you're most looking forward to doing when you go back in person, or is there one? Probably just everything that you do, right? Feeding homeless and.
Well, I actually went out this morning to feed homeless and hold up signs for a little bit. Not very long. It's not the same for the homeless. I just go out, stand far away with my mask, open up my trunk. You can see it on my Facebook page. It's just not the same. You can't get close. You can't interact with them as much. And going out with signs and talking to people. People just don't seem as interested now. Understandably, we all want to get out of this COVID. All 7 or 7.6 billion of us are ready to get back to our normal life. So I'm just looking forward to going back and meeting up with friends and going out and talking to people and starting communities and going on with life post-COVID. So, yeah.
Thank you. It's very inspiring. Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do. And you don't have to agree with me, folks, and everything. That's fine. But I just hope that you can take some of this and make it relevant to your personal life. Some of you, again, are wired differently than me. I nurture nature. It's normal for me to get out there. I used to go door to door for Jesus and teach people how. I'm not afraid. Most of you would never do this, and you don't have to. But just remember, let's try to take the next level, and we've got something to share. And let's try to build something for other people.
Stick together, right?
Stick together. Definitely. Now, I guess, Megan, this would be 30 to 40 years ago when I'd go over to the piano and have the altar call. But we don't do that anymore, right? No altar call, folks. And no praying.
Well, thank you so much. And yeah, we should have one of these days back in person and do some music and other, things, rituals. But this is good. And Zoom has brought us together in different ways too, even though it's obviously, as you said, it's not the same as in person, but I'm glad that we could get together, even from different states, without the commute, a different time zone for you.
We would have never met, Megan, if it were not for this, right? Without the digital dialogue. So we need that as well. Please don't take what I said that we throw all the computers out. Just try to balance it out. Let's add this face-to-face stuff with it and have both.
That's right.